Hi, my name's Darrel Haemer, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here at Presque Isle Woodturners for this demo. And the plan is to demonstrate how I make one of these tripod bowls similar to this. This one is not quite done yet, and we'll be getting back to this later. But this is what I hope to demonstrate. So let's go ahead and jump into this. So to get started, as with most wood turning projects, we need a block of wood, right? So for this, we're going to use and this can be anything. If you want to start with a log, if you want to start with a board, if you want to do a glue up, if you want to do segments, whatever, it really doesn't matter. We just need something that I'll get some dimensions for you here. This piece happens to be, where would we like this? Can we get an overhead view? So this piece happens to be 8 inches in diameter and about 2 3/4 thick, but there's lots of room for variation about this. One thing I like about this project is that I think it's a great project for beginners, intermediate, and advanced all alike, because it involves a lot of things. Of course, bowl turning, but it also uses some spindle turning. We deal with fitting glue joints and numerous things like that. And you can do segments and stuff like that. You could do a live edge on this. You could do more than 3 legs. So there's all kinds of room for creative expandability for whatever your level might be. So we need to start with some kind of blank, though. About 8 inches, however deep you want your bowl to be, minus a little bit. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. This happens to be glued up in a few stripes. It really doesn't matter too much. And I drilled a hole in the center. I'm going to use a woodworm screw, which is one of these guys. Most of you are probably familiar with this. If you're not, this mounts in the chuck. Okay, so we're going to mount this guy in the chuck. So you need to get the correct diameter of the shaft of your woodworm screw. This one's 5/16, so make sure it's the right size, because I have another one that's 3/8, and I have drilled holes for the 3/8 and then realized that I was using this woodworm screw, which does not work. All right, so this guy just goes in the center. You want to kind of wiggle it around until you're sure it has a good seat, because there's kind of notches in there that it'll grab onto. Just make sure it's in there good and snug. It's going to hold your bowl, so you don't really want it coming out. All right. And now we put this guy on. Now I know this thing is a little bit goofy with the lock, right? We'll lock it up and get this guy screwed on here. Yeah, and I have a piece of tape on here so that I knew I had the right piece of wood, so don't mind that. Okay, now if you're using one of these, it does need to be flat on the back side where it comes in contact with your jaws. So keep that in mind. If you're starting with a log or another piece of wood like that, you'll probably need to use a Forstner bit or something to flatten out the area where your jaws are going to make contact with it, because that's what keeps it stable. Otherwise, it might hold it on there, but it might, like if you push on it here, it might be able to push back. That's not going to work. So make sure it's really good and solid. Give it a couple smacks for fun. Okay, we're ready to go. So what we're going to do is turn the outside of the bowl. So this is the bottom of the bowl, of course, since we have a hole in this side. We don't want that to be the bottom. This is the bottom. We're going to turn the outside of the bowl. It can be, well, probably a lot of different shapes, realistically. But we'll just kind of get started a little bit. How's the sound? Does everyone hear me okay? If you can't hear me, raise your hands. So. All right. We'll start with some type of bowl gouge here. I don't know what it is. Some medium size, some kind of standard long grind. I don't get too fussy about that stuff. It's a gouge. All right. Let's make it spin. And I'm not using the tailstock. You can if you want, but often don't for just doing something like this. But whatever you're comfortable with really is where you should be at. And there's probably, there's 100 ways to do this. So whatever you're most comfortable with. So I just want to flatten this side some first. Okay, because I am going to have to lay out for a tenon. And I'm going to do that now since I've got a spot in the middle. All right, and I happen to know that my tenon needs to be 1 3/4 inches. So you want this tenon to be as small as it can be. So figure out what the smallest tenon is that your chuck will grab, and that's really what you want to use here. And that the reason for that will become more obvious later, but we're going to go with that. And I usually just cheat this by doing a little math. I find the center point and take half the tenon, measure out, make a mark. Still figuring out this lathe. I only have a MIDI lathe at home. So I will just mention that you can do this project or similar project if all you have is a MIDI lathe. You don't need a big full-size lathe like this. A MIDI lathe is very capable of doing a project like this. Okay, so I want to start thinking. I got chips in my eyeballs here. Always want to wear a full face shield when you do this. This year's Golden Apple Awards school year has come to a close. 27 teachers were honored with this 34th year of the Golden Apple program. All right, so we'll get the kind of the depth of the tenon going, which for this, I mean, I guess it doesn't matter, whatever you're comfortable with, but I'm going to give it a good little piece to bite onto. All right. We'll go out from there and start kind of contouring the rest of bowl. And we can do, whatever you like doing. You can go this way. Not very readable, not wasted. Thankfully, they were difficult to get through. Maybe even intentionally difficult. His idea was that a math textbook should be readable. Should be something that a person can sit down and understand and enjoy. We always like to say, math isn't really hard unless you make it hard. But the old books were making it hard. Over the years, Big Ideas Learning has grown to a company of 180 employees. Most of them working here on campus. This is the second year Big Ideas Learning has employed Golden Apple teachers with $250 cash to help offset costs in the classroom. We're an education company. So one thing to keep in mind here is we are going to be putting legs on this. So you'll need to want to be a little bit mindful of where you're going to be placing your legs. And it can be a little bit helpful if that area is a little bit less curved. The sharper the curve is there, you kind of get more of a gap in your leg, and we'll look at that a little bit more later. But it's it can be helpful to start to be mindful of those things at this stage as you're creating the contour. So this is a great way just to say thank you and to support what you do. So thank you so much. Thanks to Tim Larson and Big Ideas Learning for their support of the Golden Apple Award-winning teacher. There. I don't want to get too hung up on this stage of it since the demo isn't really about, contouring a bowl, but we'll get there. All right, let's see what this looks like. Okay, so it's kind of there. See what's going on. Got a little bit of tear out there, of course. So I might do a little pass just with this guy that's a little bit less aggressive. Let's see what we can do. So my lathe at home doesn't have a digital readout. It just had numbers, and I had to replace the mechanism on it or something like that. So I don't even have the numbers. So my RPMs are completely irrelevant to me. I just, whatever it seems like, looks good, feels good, but this is 1150 apparently. So for those who are curious. Okay, so that improved our end grain tear out. So what I could do is something like negative rake, scrape this to, refine the contour a little bit. And then I would say, okay, I did forget one thing though. I want to put a dovetail on the tenon. So let's come in and do that. This is the largest tool rest I've ever used in my life. I did see that in there. Thank you. We'll see if I need it later. It's fantastic, really. I mean, I'm not complaining. I use a skew to do this. Everyone, I don't know if everyone does that or not, but I just use a skew. And I really just eyeball it. I know there's a bit of a taper on the chuck jaws, so. So I just do that. Okay. Okay. So now I've got the outside of our bowl with the tenon on it, which we'll need later. So I would sand this and finish the outside of the bowl at this point. So if you're not familiar with these guys, I don't know what this is called, like a radial hand sander. I'm just making up words. So these things are super slick. I love it. So if you're not familiar with it, it's just a handle. And this is the same kind of head that you'd get with like a power sander that you'd use with a power sander, but it just spins with a bearing. Okay, and they work so stinking well for sanding an outside of the bowl like this, and it uses the spinning of the lathe, so you can see, even if you just spin it manually, what's going on there as that pushes against sandpaper, rotates it, and it's so much more effective than just using sandpaper on the lathe. So if you're not familiar with these, or if you don't have one, I highly recommend it. And this is what I would use at this point to sand the outside of this bowl, which I'm not going to do for the sake of everyone here. What we are going to do next is leave the bowl on the chuck, but take the chuck off the lathe, which I'm going to have to do with pliers. I have an adapter on here, and it ends up unscrewing the adapter instead of the chuck. Let's see, so I probably need this. I don't know if I'm pretty weak. I don't know if I can do this or not. You got it. All right. So we're going to take this off with the chuck. I lost audio. Are we okay with audio? Still there? Okay. Okay, so now, instead of taking this off the chuck, turning it around, hauling out the inside of the bowl, we have to put legs on this guy, right? So I didn't bring my drill press with me. So what we're going to do instead is watch a little video. And because of some audio technicality stuff, I'm going to narrate this video for you instead of you hearing the audio and the video. It's going to be fun. So we'll get that ready. I am just full of shavings here. It's better than being full of something else. Okay. I can. I think we're all set. So what you see here is the bowl on the chuck, just like this. Okay, this is what you're seeing right there in the video. So that's where we're starting off. Yep. Okay, so at the drill press, it's also been 5 or 6 weeks since I've seen this video, so bear with me. We're going to drill 3 holes in this bowl, of course, if you want 3 legs. So the way I do this, and this depends a little bit on your specific chuck, which we'll talk about. This chuck here that I have has a kind of an outset, like a whatever you want to call that, coming out the bottom of it. And I actually use that because that will slot right down into, I think you can keep it rolling. That'll slot right down into a hole that I drill into a piece of wood. And that's the one I usually use, and it's very convenient for that. All I do is drill a piece of hole that's the same size as that, and we'll see how that works in just a second, as I explain a little bit more of that. But most people here probably are using a chuck that's more similar to this one, which that does not protrude out the bottom of it. It has kind of this casing or whatever around it. So the bottom of the chuck is flush. So of course you can't set that down into a hole. I guess unless you drilled a giant hole for the size of the whole chuck. But if you don't want to do that, what you can do is just make a little adapter, because this is what we do, right? We make round things. So just turn a piece that'll kind of fit into the bottom of your chuck, and then put whatever size you want on the bottom, and that can sit in the hole on the board instead. Hopefully you can kind of see what's going on there. And this will just spin freely in that hole, just like that. And we're going to use that. So now that we have that in place, and you can mount that board on your drill press so it'll sit in place and rotate. So that's kind of the clamping mechanism for our bowl on the drill press. So now we need to measure out some degrees around the hole. If you want 3 legs, of course, it's going to be 120 degrees for each mark. So mark those on the line so that you'll make sure you can see the marks when you put your chuck on there, that doesn't cover them up, because you'll need to be able to see these marks. So then when you put your chuck, you mount your chuck in there. You'll also need a mark on your chuck, which you can either put a mark on your chuck or use a piece of tape or something. So you stick your adapter on there, you put it in the hole, and now you can line up your marks so that you have a starting point. And then when you rotate it to each of the other marks, you'll know that you're drilling holes at 120 degrees around your bowl, right? I don't know what I'm talking about here, some non-literal. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I forgot I went into some of that. Sorry. I'm sure the video is probably a lot better than what I've made it out to be now, but yeah, ideally you want your drill bit going into your bowl at kind of 90 degrees to whatever the curvature of the bowl is. You know, so which is technically a tangent, perpendicular to the tangent for anyone who likes math. If you don't like math, you're like this guy. This guy. Okay, so here we're lining up the marks. There's our starting point. And you do need, I guess you do need a tilting drill press. I mean, do pretty much all drill presses tilt, or is that more of a? Okay, okay. All right, which I guess would work the same way though. So you either need to be able to tilt the table or the head. And you can do it by hand, but best of luck. You do want them to be somewhat accurate, I think. I'm not that great at drilling accurate holes, so it is completely arbitrary. So when you angle the head on the drill press, what you're doing here, let's do overhead if we can. Oh, is that hard to switch back? Okay, so yeah, when you're setting this up on the drill press and you angle the head, you're determining how far in toward the center or out toward the outside of the bowl you want the leg. And then when you find that area, then you're finding the perpendicular to the tangent of the curve. So you're kind of, you're finding a balance of 2 variables at the same time. Okay, so if you tilt your drill press, let's say you tilted your drill press to this angle. Okay, well, if it's in here, you know, you're going to have kind of a leg coming out wonky at the bottom of your bowl, right? You want it to be perpendicular to the curve, which is out here. Do you see what I mean? So about 90 degrees to the surface of the bowl. So you'd want to move. So if this is the angle that you want for your leg, you need to move your bowl on the drill press table until your bit meets it about here. Now, if you want the angle to be more straight up, now you wouldn't want this leg to be out here on the edge because that's just going to look super weird, right? So you need to move your bowl mounting in so your bit is going to come into the bowl somewhere around here. Does that make sense? Does anyone have any more questions for that? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So that's why the actual angle of the bit really is arbitrary. It completely depends on how you've shaped your bowl and where you want your legs to be on the bottom of the bowl. The depth is also pretty arbitrary. You can make the tenons on your legs as long as you want. You can go all the way through the top of the bowl if you want, but you're just going to cut it off later. So, you know, I usually do it like 5/8, 3/4, something like that. Just make sure later that the tenon on your leg isn't longer than your hole is deep. You don't want it to bottom out in the hole. We'll talk about that a little bit more later too, but 1 holes, 2 holes, realign the third mark, and you're all set. Okay, so now we have half of a bowl with 3 holes in it. Looking pretty good. Kind of equally spaced, 120 degrees around the bottom of it, which is what we want. Okay, so this is what we end up with right here. Is that bowl with 3 holes, and this is actually the one that you saw in the video. So this is where we're at now. This one happens to be, what is this? Is this, I don't know if this is segmented or if these go through. I think this one's segmented. It just has a ring in it. Okay, so we've got 3 holes now. So now it seems like, okay, now we use the tenon, we put it back in the chuck and we hollow it out, right? Okay, we still don't get to do that part. Now we have to make legs for this guy. So let's do some legs. It's time for spindle turning. Now I did cheat. I'm not going to bore you all to death by turning 3 legs. I'm just going to do 1. I already have the other 2, so we'll see if I can manage 1 leg. Okay. And I'm going to use a different chuck for this because I already have the jaws swapped out. Now this is a small piece of wood. It is not big enough to grab with regular jaws. So I'm going to cheat and use some pen jaws. As though this might not be a pen, it's close enough. All right, so let's see how we want to do this. Let's see how we fit. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, put that in there. And I am going to use the tailstock for this. You might, I don't know if you could get away with it or not, but you're going to get chatter out here on the edge. So we'll just do this. Let's lock this up a bit. Okay. I am going to swap out this monster for a smaller monster. Okay, so spindle turning, right? We'll just get something round first. We'll go from there. What do we want to do? We could do, you can do this however you want. We can use rougher to get it down. We've got carbide. We can do a spindle gouge. Maybe we'll use all 3. We'll see. All right, let's make things go. I don't know, something. I'm not really that frequent of a user of a rough and gouge, honestly. I'll do it for something like this to take the corners off, which, you know, is the purpose. I understand that, but a lot of times I'll just use the spindle gouge for the whole thing. Spindle gouge. Is this round? Yeah. Okay. So the goal here is to match, you know, somewhat as much as we can to match this little guy. This is the other leg. The other two legs that I have is this simple. It's just an ordinary little leg, but we're going to want it to be basically the same length, same tenon length, which is this part back here. That's what we're going to glue into the bowl. So we want that to be the same length. And of course, the holes on the bowl are pre-drilled now. So the tenon needs to be fit and sized to the hole on the bowl. And it does need to be a good fit because we're going to glue it in there. So this is our target. We're going to put that there and see if we can hit it. All right. Let's just take some more of this off. Okay. So I'm going to lay out the length of it. Now, since I've got my tailstock up here, I don't want a little hole in the end of my leg. So I've got to come back from the end a little bit to figure out where my actual end is going to be. And I'll mark that. But that's not as crucial right now as the tenon. I am going to turn this down and get the diameter on the tenon first, and then I'll worry about the rest of it. And the length of the tenon doesn't matter too much either quite yet. Okay, I'm going to use calipers for the diameter of the tenon. So since I've got this guy, well, I could use this guy, but technically it's probably better to get it from the hole, right? It should be the same since that other one's a pretty decent fit, but let's see if we can do this. All right. So this is how the diameter that we want our tenon to be. This is about the length of the tenon. So I'm going to turn this spot here down to this diameter, and then we'll go from there. I'm going to do that with a parting tool. I didn't put my marks on properly. Got little ones, but not big ones. Can't see them. That'll work. Okay. So now from that line over this way is my tenon area. Okay, that's a little smaller than that. Let's see where we're at. This is one of those fun moments where you get to just kind of turn on and off the lathe a dozen times until you finally get there, right? But you're better off with it being a little bit too thick than too thin, because you can always take more off, but putting it back on is hard work. getting real close. It becomes a gamble. So for me, it's more convenient to turn these legs with the tenon on the inside, because it allows me to finish the complete leg out here all the way out to the foot, finish it right on the lathe, and then not have to chisel anything off or sand it, finish it up, clean it up later. The problem is you can't test the fit of the tenon on the lathe because, of course, all of this is in the way, right? We can't put our bowl on there. So that's the trade-off. And I've turned it around and done it the other way, and it's just kind of a pain either way. So this is what I've done. It generally seems to work out okay if I use the calipers, and it's a little tedious, but you get there eventually. A little bit of that. Okay, I think that'll do it. A little thick back here. A little bit. Okay, one more time. One more time now. Okay, so we're gonna make that work. So now we get to turn the rest of it, which is slightly more fun. Right? Always stop the lathe when you're moving the tool rest. Okay. We can use calipers and stuff to also get the the diameter of the leg where the shoulder is. But I think I'm just going to eyeball it because it's not mission critical, right? It's aesthetics. Okay. Getting there a little bit. But we just about have the right diameter up here at the shoulder. Okay. So another thing I do to cheat, I'm not above cheating. It's whatever gets the job done, right? So so the leg is tapered, but I do want the sides of it to be straight. It's a straight taper down, right? So the skew works pretty well for that, not in the traditional respectable sense, but in the scraping sense that it's a flat edge that we can use. I mean, effectively, I'm using it as like a box scraper. Is that what they're called? Straight edge scraper? I don't know these things. So it helps, it helps do that. You can also use a negative rake, which I've got this guy, and it does have a kind of a flattened edge on the one part of it, so it's handy for this kind of stuff. I use it a lot for the insides of bowls, but with a little flat spot over here, I can use it for things like this too, without it creating too much contour. Okay, it's getting close. Okay, I'm just going to put the nose on it, and we'll be almost done with our leg here. Are we still doing good on time, Mark? I have no concept of time is, vanished. Okay, I think we're okay. All right, so let's put we need to shorten this up a little bit because remember our headstock is poking into this, so we need to shorten this up. Like that. And since we do have it in the pen jaws, and we're hardly going to be doing anything left with this, we can turn the end of this right off now and we'll be okay. And then we can finish it up like that. So we are good to go down here. Once I get the majority of this out of the way, I'm just going to move this back. Like so. Okay. So we can take this off. Okay. Just a wee bit of sandpaper, real quick like. Okay, and that's going to be fine. So let's put a little finish on this guy. I have, I don't know where I got this stuff. It's Axe abrasive sanding paste. I don't think you can get it anymore. There's similar stuff out there, though, I believe. It is really slick. I do like it. And that's what we're going to use. Yeah, is that what it is? Okay. That's good to know because I'm probably going to want to get some more someday. Because it is really slick. Let's get our sawdust off of here. And you just sort of, you just kind of put it on, Okay, so the important thing here is we don't want to get any finish where we're going to be gluing this in, right? So we have to make sure we stop at the shoulder. And if you think that might be an issue, just put a little bit of tape on your tenon to protect it from getting finish in there. Because we really need to make sure the glue is going to work well in there. That's going to be crucial. Because depending on how thick you turn your bowl, if you turn it pretty thin, you've got to think about the size of the glue joint that you have on these legs. It's not necessarily that much surface area, right? So you want it to be quality. Okay. It's a leg. All right. So we're going to turn this off now. By that, I mean we're going to part it off with the parting tool. Okay. I'm back in here and we'll be done with the leg part. I don't know about everyone else. If you like spindle work, this might be cool. I don't look forward to the legs. I think they're super boring and they're repetitive and so I'm just trying to get them done with it. That's my goal. Get them done. Okay. And before I part that off, I just want to double check and make sure I didn't make the tenon too long. So I'm going to check the depth of my holes. I happen to have a depth gauge, but you can literally use almost anything. And to demonstrate, I will. So I have this guy, which is really handy. It's like a router depth gauge, or I don't know what it's originally for, but this guy just slides so you can see whatever depth it is. But if you don't have one of these, which you, I don't know, you probably don't, just get a piece of scrap. Just get a little piece of scrap that is small enough to fit in your hole, put it in your hole, grab it with your fingernail, and that's how deep your hole is, right? That's the cheap version of the $20 tool. Okay, and lay it on here. Okay, see, my tenon is a wee bit long, so I'm going to take a little bit off of the end of that. Having extra space in your hole is okay. You can have space, it just can't be too long. So make sure you err on the side of short. All right, let's take this off. Okay, so one leg off, and I just need to, this little nib the nib off. I don't know what I'm talking about. This is preferably done without cutting fingers off. Okay. Yes.
Is your design to expose the end of the legs inside the bowl, or is it to not expose the legs?
I'm sorry. I meant to mention that. So this specific project, what this project is specifically, is for the legs to be exposed on the inside of the bowl. I apologize. I forgot to mention that. If you just want a bowl with 3 legs, then you turn a bowl with a thick bottom. You drill a few holes in the bottom thick enough to glue legs in. You glue them in there and you're done, right? If you want a bowl where you can see the tenons of the legs on the inside, that's what we're doing here. And it does require a couple specific different steps in the process, and that's what we're working through. And that's why we have to put these legs in now instead of at the end. And that'll become a little bit more apparent, I think, in just a moment. But yes, this bowl specifically has the legs exposed on the inside.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, legs. So let's see if this guy actually fits. I think it's probably going to be a little bit big, which is okay. Oh boy, that's pretty nice. It's a little snug, but it's probably pounded. I didn't bring my mallet. I probably should have, but yeah, I think that's probably what we're going to do. I mean, you can sand it if it's a tiny bit big, you can sand it a little bit, but you want to be careful that you don't taper the tenon. It does need to stay straight, or else you could end up with a gap on the inside of the bowl where you can see it. So be careful if you sand it. I have used a bench chisel on it as well, and what that looks like is not doing it on the lathe, but on a workbench somewhere where you can be secure. You can take the chisel and just shave off little bits like that going into the shoulder. And if you go around it, you can effectively shave off a small amount that is still circular enough that it works perfectly fine. So I have done that as well with success. And that's why it's really important or preferable to make it a little bit large than a little bit small, because you can fix it later if it's a little bit large. And I think that's a little bit large because you have to account for glue. It's easy to dry fit things and be like, yeah, I can pound that in. Then you get glue in there. It's like, oh, I can't pound it in with glue though. And at that point, it's a little late in the game, you know. You got glue setting up, and that's when you start saying words, and it's a whole thing, you know. You get glue setting up, it changes your attitude. See, she knows what I'm talking about. Uh-huh. That's right. Things get all sorts of sticky. This, you know, what I'm doing here might look really, really janky, and it is. But at the end of the day, it's about making it work, right? Just want to get this guy to fit in here a little better. Oh, yeah. 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 We're on the way home now. Okay. That's a nice fit. That's what we want. Okay. So we're going to glue. What's that? Oh, no, we're okay. We're okay now. That's all right. So we're going to glue these guys in here. And what I didn't do is bring like a piece of plastic, put over the lathe, but we're going to be okay. Here's a little trick, if you can call it that, because I would imagine the glue would kind of soak through the paper, but it won't soak through tape. So I'm just going to create a little landing area for myself. All right, because what I'm going to do is put a little glue on that. This is specifically not on the lathe bed for anyone who can't see clearly right now. I'm just giving myself a small reservoir of wood glue. So it probably looks like I'm like throwing my hair back in the wind. It's the microphone wire that keeps wanting to come around the side. So I apologize for that. It's the fans, you know, you can't help it. It's just, you know, I don't know. All right. So here's how we do this. I'm going to come back to this is a very specific tool. I got it from Woodcraft. No, it's a piece of junk. It's a little piece of stick, and I keep them whenever I cut something off and I end up with a little tiny stick like this. I keep it because they are fantastic little glue applicators, especially for an instance like this where you need to get glue into a hole. Okay, and it has to go in the hole. If you put the glue on the tenon, when you push it in, all the glue is now on the outside of your bowl around the hole, which is where we don't want it, right? So you need to put the glue in the hole and then put the leg in the hole. So here's how we do it. We grab a little glue with the stick and we put it in a hole. It's tricky. It's technical, but we'll get there. Okay. There's also some different mindsets about glue, right? It can be a contentious subject. There's the whole world where it's like if you don't get squeeze out, then you didn't get enough glue in it. There's no such thing as too much glue. There's like no such thing as too little glue. So it's, you know, there's just everything. It's always wrong according to someone. But I will say in this case, you're not going to want a lot of excess glue and squeeze out because the outside of your bowl is done, right? This is finished and done. So you don't want to have to come back and try to get a bunch of glue off that has squeezed out from your leg and make sure it didn't ruin your finish and everything. So, you know, get enough glue in there that you think you're good, but I guess it's your job if you want the squeeze out and you want to do that. It's your thing to handle. Okay, so when you put your legs in, you might want to consider orientation a little bit. What looks good on the outside of the bowl, etc. And I think I probably want to start moving the process along a bit here. Excuse me. Let's get a little encouragement on this guy. Look at that. Okay. So that's a leg. So we're just going to do this 2 more times quickly. All right. Glue and hole. Again, you want good coverage because your glue joint surface area is limited. And the most important area is the part out toward the face of the bowl, right? Because that's the part that you're definitely keeping unless you ruin your bowl. So the further out toward the edge of the bowl that you are, the more important it is that you get good gluing there. Probably something like this. All right, this one's a little bit looser, but I think it'll still be okay. This we'll find out. One more. There's some glue in there. No, this part is exhilarating to watch, but there. All right, one last leg. We'll do him like this. Okay, I have never clamped these. I just turn it upside down and let it sit. And that seems to work fine. It is worth being mindful that the inside of those holes is a closed gap, right? So if you push something into it, you've now created a pressurized pocket in there. And if your joint isn't tight enough, it could potentially push your leg back out, okay, if you don't put any weight on it. But I think the weight of the bowl seems to be enough. All right, so abracadabra, the glue is now dry. I'm going to take this piece of tape off, this other blank. So this is where we're at now. We've got feet glued in and set up. We are ready to rock and roll finally on the inside of the bowl. That's the fun part, right? I think so. I got to get my chuck off. Wait for it. Not that. Let's see. How does this work? So we don't need this guy anymore. Oh. But I do need to take this blank off of this previous chuck. So let's do that. Let's see if that'll come off. This out. All right. And now we say a little prayer that the tenon is the right size, right? Now, here's an important thing to consider in hindsight. Your legs, we're now going to chuck this up using the tenon. So we need to grab this tenon that we left from the first step. But we've got legs on this thing now, right, that get in the way. So we need to make sure when we lay out for the legs earlier that there's going to be enough space in here that this will sit in the chuck and not run into anything back here. Okay. So that becomes something that you need to consider earlier. And since I have a hole in this, I tend to use that as a kind of a straightening guide. And we can check it afterward too, but all right. And I don't really want to get hit in the face with it, so I'm going to snug it up pretty good. Not like that. All right, how are we doing? This doesn't look too bad. That'll work. Okay, so now we have a bowl. And so you can see that we had a fair bit of space that we could have played. So if you wanted to put the legs further back here, we could have done that. We still have probably almost an inch in here. But it's something that you can't fix later, right? You need to know that ahead of time and plan for that accordingly. And it depends on your chuck, because I think my other chuck's a little bit bigger. So it depends on the specific chuck that you're going to be using at this stage. So just be aware of that. And now we get to hollow the inside. So let's do that. Let's hollow this guy out. We'll get back to I don't know. See what's going on. This little guy. And you can use your favorite hollowing tools and method for this as well. Gouges, and I'm just gonna not leave that there. Okay. There we go. So it's not perfectly aligned, but it's close enough. It's all right. If you're going to turn this down to a, paper thin kind of a thing, then you'd have a little issue on one side. But we're probably going to go, well, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Just start taking stuff out, right? Let's kind of move this guy a little bit out the way. Still in the way. It's a great big honking bugger. I'm used to a MIDI lathe, and it still feels like it's in the way. I don't know. Probably just get spoiled really fast. Really fast. Okay, we still have a little room. So one nice thing about doing these with a slice in it of some type, whether it's a layer, a segmented layer, or just a solid layer, something like that, you have kind of an automatic depth gauge. Until you hit that layer, you're not at the bottom yet, right? You can just kind of keep hogging out, because I know I haven't even hit that layer yet. Okay, so there's that. But we still have space below that. And at some point, our legs are going to show up, right? So we'll get those as well. Now, those sometimes you don't see them though. So I wouldn't really bet on being able to see those as you turn. All right. I could use a little more support in here. Maybe. Whoa. Always turn the lathe off when you move your tool stock. Safety first, folks. Safety first. Okay, so that felt a little bit rough going through there, and I have a feeling it's because we have found our legs. Okay, so let me clean this out a little bit and we'll take a look. So it feels a little bit rough when you go through there because there's a pocket there, right? There's a hole. So for a brief time, you have a wee little bit of intermittent turning. We are not there yet. And that's a good reminder of, so this particular piece is poplar and chestnut. And I don't know if any of you have turned chestnut, tried turning chestnut, but it's kind of garbage. It turns like cardboard. It's very soft and just like chunky. It like comes off like chunky dust. So it's very rough, very coarse wood to turn. And, you know, whatever. If you like it, you like it. That's okay. But I'm not impressed. I haven't been impressed with it. All right, let's keep going. We'll give it a little more gumbo as we can. All right, trying to get done. See, that's that chestnut. As soon as you hit it, it's just like, that's what it is. All right.
Darrell, what type of material is the legs?
Those are also chestnut.
Okay.
So this one is poplar with a chestnut slice in it, and then I made the legs chestnut to match the slice.
Okay.
I have a call back. Yeah, and it's, you know, it's the end product. It looks okay. It's kind of, you know, it's got lots of grain and some interesting marks and stuff. Kind of has the natural rustic feel thing about it. Just is not a smooth, like refined wood to work with. But so I have just reached the top of the bottom poplar layer. So I've gotten through the chestnut slice and I've just started to reach that poplar on the inside, which tells me I've got this much, right? So we've got a little bit more to take out. We'll do that and we'll be there soon enough. All right. Yeah. So the bottom is still it's a wee bit thick compared to the sides. Let me round that out a little bit. So what I've got going on here, I don't know if we can get yeah, okay. Let me get this out of the way. So we've got a leg here, right? But the leg is actually coming into the chestnut ring on the inside. So because they're coming in at an angle, what it looks like where the leg meets the bowl, you know, in relation to that ring isn't the same as what it does on the inside. And so the further in you turn that, you can kind of shift those two things apart to some extent. I don't think in this case that I'm going to be able to get that leg all the way off the ring. It's just going to be an overlap, which is okay. Normally I separate those, but I think this one's going to overlap, which is all right, I think. Let's just do a little bit more on this, and then we are going to move on to the last step. That's good to hear, huh? Still need more? Yeah. All right. To save, just to save a little bit on time, I'm not going to finish the inside of this bowl. I would make the bottom a little bit thinner. I've still got another 1/8 to 3/16 to take out of the bottom. But that really doesn't matter. That's just hollowing your bowl. So I would sand it up and finish the inside of the bowl at this point. Okay. And then it seems like we would have a finished bowl, right? Except that we've got a tenon bottom. So now we would have this lovely finished bowl with this and no real way to grab this again, right? So, of course, we need to jam chuck this guy. So here's our bowl after we finished the inside. All right. So if you're not familiar with a jam chuck, it is just that. It's a chuck mechanism that you jam something onto. So that's what we're going to do. This is just a little piece of wood that sort of fits, you know, the inside of what you're going to jam onto it. This is not specifically made for this. This is a piece of jam chuck that I've been using for all kinds of stuff. It fits inside, it'll be good enough. So let's chuck up the jam chuck block. I don't know.
Darrell, do you typically put finish on the interior of the bowl before this?
Yes,
or,
at this
or
point,
you
the
do it
inside of the
after?
bowl is completely finished.
Okay.
So just like this one, this is all finished on the inside. It's sanded, it has finish on it, the lip is finished, everything.
Okay.
It's all finished.
All right.
I just didn't finish the inside
Yep.
of that to save a little bit of time.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. So this isn't done, completely finished, but this is still on here. All right. So this guy's in here. We're going to need a couple things. I've got sawdust hanging on my microphone. It's just cats and dogs. All right. Move things out of the way a little bit. We need our tail stock back. So let's get it back. It's really handy if when you turn the tenon initially, you leave a little bit of a center marker. And that usually happens just from the tool. It just kind of, you know, leaves a little ring center or something like that. But it is really nice to have a center mark because we're going to use the tailstock. And if you know exactly where to put that, it'll help us get things aligned a little more quickly. All right, so you take a little bit of grippy stuff. You could use whatever. and we stick it on here, wherever we think center is initially, and then we will fine tune that. Okay, tailstock. And this is the last step of the project. It's also the most precarious and scary. So I'm gonna get this up. Get my center point and see how straight I am. Oh, nailed it. I am telling you guys, if I didn't have luck, I just don't even know. I don't even know about that. Okay. So I'm going to give that a little squeeze. That feels all right. Okay. So obviously at this point, things get awkward, right? Because we can't go sticking things in here. We've got legs where we don't want legs, right? But this is the game. So we're going to play the game. All right. So with the lathe off.
Darrell, there is a really long tool rest there if you want.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So I can
That would be
stand on it
helpful.
over on
Sure,
this end.
yeah.
And okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so with the lathe off, I highly recommend sticking your tool in here and getting a gauge on your safe zone, right? So if I am holding this gouge at this angle, I can come out to about here, right? If I'm holding it at this angle, I really can't move it hardly at all, right? This is critical, probably for reasons that are really obvious at this point, but in case it's not, when this is rotating, this is a zero tolerance game now, okay? If you hit one of the legs, it's game over. The project is done. You get to start over. So what's that? Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. So this is a pre-planning stage where you make absolutely sure that you know where you can put your tool, at what angle, and at what engagement rotation. Because if you get a skate at this point, it's going to skate you outward. Game over, right? Okay. And if you get a catch, I mean, we're using a jam chuck. This isn't locked up in here. So if you get a catch, you might be in trouble. So we just need to make sure that things are going to be pretty kosher at this point. Now, what we're doing here is trying to get as much of this tenon off as we can at this point so that we don't have to chisel away at this thing for an hour to get rid of the tenon, right? Now, if you don't want to do this stage because you're like, this, I don't want to die today, right? Then don't do this. Like, use a power grinder, take the whole thing off with a bench chisel, whatever, a hand carver, whatever you want to do. You don't have to do it this way, but it saves a lot of time if we can get as much of this tenon off as we can, right? Now, this bowl gouge, I used this earlier a little bit on the contour. It's a little bit smaller. So if you can use a smaller tool in here, you know, space matters at this point, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do, we're going to turn it on a little bit slower. I'm just going to come straight in at this angle because I can't. So here's something else that might be probably just worth it, right? I haven't done it, probably should, etc. Just mark your tool rest. Okay, I'm not going to move this tool rest during this operation. So I can just put a piece of tape where that leg is coming out. This kind of gives me the trajectory of the leg and pretty much where it is. Because when this thing spins, you really can't see the legs. So these things are like invisible killers. I'm telling you, it's scary as heck. So let's do that. Okay, good times, right? Let's stick things in here. Let's do it. All right. We also don't have to go 1,000,000 miles a minute, right? Our RPMs, it's not that big of a deal. We're just trying to take a little tenon off. We're not trying to get the world's cleanest surface. Just trying to get rid of this guy. Just kind of nibbling away at it. I'm not, this isn't a technical time of like riding the bevel or trying to get a contour on here. Just nibbling away until I get it down to be pretty close to flush with the bottom of the rest of it. This still requires straight out with the tool, right? Straight out. Look, we're still alive. Good job. Good job, everyone. Okay. So, I mean, if you want to go in with a different tool, a different angle, and try to get more of that, you go. But that's good enough for me. Because when you start playing around with these things, that's when things happen, right? So, we're going to take this off and we're going to finish this thing up. Okay. Hold your bowl. There's nothing holding it in there at this point. Okay. So now we have the same bowl with the smaller nub on the bottom. All that effort just for a smaller nub, right? It's what we do. It's what we do. We make big wood pieces into smaller wood pieces. All right. I do this with a bench chisel. I'm sure there are plenty of other good ways to do it, but this is how I do it. I don't know how common bench chisels are in the turning world, really. I originally didn't come from the turning world, so these are a little more like home base for me. The priority for bench chisels, well, I guess like most woodworking tools, is sharp. They're often one of the sharpest tools in the shop, as they should be. And it makes doing things like this much, much easier and safer. Because even what I'm doing here, which is, I'm not hitting it with a mallet, I'm not leaning into this, but I do still have, this guy is in the danger zone, right? Okay. And chisel goes this way, fingers over here. Not great, but I'm bracing with my thumb. I'm not leaning into it. I'm really just pushing through. But this is why it's so important that your bench chisel be sharp, because the duller it is, the more you have to push on it. And the more you push on it, the further it goes in that direction when it goes through the wood. So that makes it dangerous. Anyway, passionate about bench chisels, apparently. I don't know. Oh, don't worry about it. Okay, we're getting down there. We're getting down there. So now you can just sort of do this guy, smooth it off a little bit from the other direction. And we might, you can sand this. You might get the power sander out and run over this. I didn't do a fantastic job of getting that smooth right around right around there. So what we'll do real quickly is grab a piece of smooth paper, get it a little bit. All right. Yes, it is very nice for that. There's no question. It will tend to chip out because the grain is so coarse that it really doesn't hold together real well. So if you don't have a sharp chisel and you cut it, then it will probably break out, but it is nice and soft. So chiseling through it isn't too much of a chore. Which incidentally is why I chose it for this particular stage of the project. Not gonna lie. All right. So obviously it doesn't look fantastic. We've got that ring on there, and that's still going to be visible if I put finish on that. So I might just wait and power sand it some at home. So you just sand it up, put a little finish on it, and you're done. That's a bowl. Sure. Yep. So here's the inside. Here's the outside. Yeah. Let me think.
The question was, is that wormy chestnut and where did you get it?
Yes, this is wormy chestnut, which is, for anyone who may not be familiar, just chestnut that's been eaten by worms. It's the same species. Killed the trees. So it's less common now because they killed the trees, and so there's not much of them around anymore. This board I found in my neighbor's mother's husband's wood shop. Yeah. He passed away. She was kind of clearing the place out, and there was a board in there. It's, I don't, it's 1,000 years old. I don't know. He just had a board of it in there. I used it for a shelf for a while, and then I repurposed it, and it is now a bowl. Okay. A silo. Interesting. Okay. And you got a bunch of it. Is it like big chunks? Little chunks. Yeah. I mean, look, chestnut is perfectly good wood. It's been used for decades, centuries, et cetera. There's really nothing wrong with it. It's just not it's not the most fun species to turn for me personally. But the end result is, it's all right. It looks all right, right? It's got character. It's got all the holes, and it's got grain patterns, and it's got that beautiful brown color. It does have a nice color to it. But that is a tripod bowl. Thank you. Oh, look at this. It's everywhere.
Any questions for Darrell? Dustin?
Okay, I see what you're saying. So,
Darrell, could you repeat the question for those on Zoom?
Yeah. So he asked if there would be any sort of value or purpose in putting a bow tie in the top of the tenon of the legs. And so what he means by a bow tie is not the dress attire for weddings and stuff. A bow tie typically is joinery for stabilizing cracks or joining boards across a gap. It's mostly cosmetic, honestly. Some of the wood, it's contentious. Some of the woodworking world wants to believe that it's really a very structural thing, and obviously is to some extent, but maybe not as much as is sometimes given credit for. But anyway, what he's talking about is putting, and those are typically bow tie shaped items. Let me get a piece of paper, and I can illustrate this very quickly.
Or a wedge that would go through the center of the leg.
Yeah, it's kind of like a wedged tenon situation. So the reason these bow tie joinery items are shaped like a bow tie, the thought is that you've got a piece of wood over here, and it's got a crack in it that goes up through here, right? And this is wood, and this is wood, and that's a crack. Now this is another board over here, and this bow tie bridges that crack. And because it's basically a dovetail, right, it holds these two pieces together, and they can't pull apart because of the shape of the dovetail. So what he's talking about is, what if we, in the top of the legs, inside the, so this is looking down inside the bowl from the top. Here's the top of our leg. What if we could put a dovetail or a bow tie in here? Now, I don't know how you would cut it if the bow tie went out past. So let's see, technically the dovetail would go on like either side of the leg, right? Good luck with that. So something like that. This is insane, by the way. If listen to this guy. Listen to this guy.
Could you quickly draw the wedge though? Because the wedge is more common in this.
Yes,
kind of
absolutely.
situation.
So a wedged tenon. We will draw it from two perspectives. The top doesn't look like a whole lot. It's the top of the tenon, and then there is it's not a slot. This is actually a piece of wood, okay? And we'll fill it in because we'll pretend that's a different species. That's the top of it. Now from the side, okay, here's the tenon, here's the top. That's probably upside down. No, it's not. Okay, now, so for the wedge tenon, what we've done is cut a slot down into the tenon. So if I could erase this part of the line, I would. That's no longer there. So our tenon is actually now this, right? And we've cut that out of the top of it. And then what you do is make a wedge piece, okay, that you drive down into that tenon. And of course, it spreads these two pieces in either direction and sort of locks it into that hole, right? They work really, really well. I really enjoy wedge tenons, and that would be infinitely more feasible. Yeah. 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 So there's maybe two things. There's maybe two ways that you could approach that. Cut your tenons first. When you first put your legs in, cut them so that you're gluing them in the hole with the slot in them. Of course, that's going to be an issue because you're going to end up with glue in the hole. But regardless of that, if you were really careful, glue them in there. And then when you turn the inside, you're going to get down to your legs. So as soon as you get down to your legs and you now have those exposed slots inside the bowl, drive your wedges in, glue them in, and then you can finish turning those off on the inside. Now, the alternative is if you really enjoy finely engineered and fine-tuned joinery, you can actually do a glue-in wedged tenon. So how do we want to illustrate that? So it's the same thing as what we have here, okay? But you have to make your wedge exactly the right size, both in depth, and of course you have to make sure the width is correct as well, because you have to know how far it's going to drive in. And so you glue up the whole thing, and when you drive the tenon into the hole, that's what drives the wedge into the slot. It all happens at the same time, okay? And it can be done. It's just very tricky. What is it? A fox tenon. Thank you. And we've got proper names for these things. So it can be done, but you pretty much only get one shot at it, and it's got to be right. So there's a couple options for wedged tenons on this, which would be fantastic. I would love to see that. I'm going to leave the bow ties to Dustin. You could do it. You would just have to hand chisel out the mortise on the inside of the bowl. Oh my gosh. I expect to see some of this stuff next month from you folks. That's what I'll be watching for.
Other questions for Darrell? Darrell, great demonstration. Very, very nice job.
Thank you.